Good morning, everybody. Once again, welcome to OP Jindal Global University and welcome to the ASEAN Indian Higher Education Leaders Conference. We are delighted to have with us today speakers, delegates, and students from 13 countries across various regions of the world, 14 including India. The theme for this conference, Achieving Research Excellence, is a high priority for university leaders. Throughout today's discussions, we hope to share experiences and learn from each other, perhaps even lay the foundations for collaborative research in future. To kick things off, let me introduce my distinguished colleagues who will be speaking at the inaugural ceremony this morning. Professor Dr. C. Rajkumar, Founding Vice Chancellor of OP Jindal Global University and Dean of Jindal Global Law School. Professor Thomas Mikal, Dean of Jindal School of Art and Architecture. Representing the Dean of Jindal Global Business School, Dr. Laknath Jaisinghe, Vice Dean of Jindal Global Business School. And Lieutenant General Dr. Rajesh Kochar, Senior Director of the Jindal Institute of Leadership Development and Executive Education and the Chief Administrative Officer of Jindal Global University. I wish you all fruitful conversations and a memorable stay at JGU and invite Dr. C. Rajkumar to deliver the welcome address.
Well, first of all, my profound apologies for the slight delay in starting this program. This is contrary to what we normally do, at least not necessarily in India, but in this university. But by way of our defense, we had a conversation with a few of our colleagues who have come from different parts of the world in my office. And I presented a copy of my book, and then that ended up becoming an autograph session. So we sort of overshot time, and that's why we are here a little late. But I want to say that what an amazing opportunity for us here at OP Jindal Global University and India to host all of you. We couldn't have had a better conference of education leaders. And in my view, the idea of education leaders has nothing to do with your designation in terms of whether you are vice chancellor or president or rector. At least in a university, everybody is a leader, and all of you, regardless of whichever position you hold in the university system, you are expected to be a leader, demonstrating the values of leadership, and that's what this conference is all about. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate and indeed thank my colleague, Professor Kalyani Unkule, and her colleagues at the Office of International Affairs and Global Initiatives of our university for really putting together this absolutely amazing conference, which I hope will be a dialogue among various individuals and institutions across the Asia-Pacific region, but also around the world. We have people from the United States and UK and many parts of the world, Australia and other parts represented. The theme of the conference is Achieving Research Excellence within ASEAN and Indian universities. Clearly, it has a very important impetus to the growth and evolution of universities in this part of the world. While there is this, I think I was having this conversation with another group of people shortly before we start this conference, and in which one of the things that I was very conscious of, highlighting is the importance of universities. Universities ought to be serving as conscience keepers within any governmental setup. And so in some ways, universities have to function in an autonomous manner so that they can work towards speaking truth to power. And that is the kind of role that universities have always played and ought to be playing. And I think it is only fair to say that one of the things that universities should be doing is to recognize the importance of international engagement and, in this case, research partnerships. And I am very pleased to see that a significant number of universities are represented in this discussion today. And I want to take this moment to welcome all of you to India and to OP Jindal Global University. We are a very relatively small university with a 10-year history. We are barely celebrating our 10th anniversary this year. And this journey that we have covered is an important journey for us, and all of us have been inspired to be part of this journey. We are a very international university. We have faculty members from 32 different countries in the world working here on a full-time basis, and that also demonstrates our institutional character. We very strongly believe in partnerships. We worked with universities around the world, including many of our partners are present here, and if we have not yet established collaboration with any one of you, then this could be an opportunity for us to do that. And I sincerely hope that you will also have conversations with our Office of International Relations. I want to also extend a very warm special welcome to some of my very dear friends who are already present here representing different institutions, in particular Colin Picker from Australia, has been a long-time friend and a partner. I also want to recognize the presence of Michael from Bhutan. So there are all these pre-existing relationships that we have, and we hope, and we have friends from Ajman University, and these are the type of partnerships that we've already cultivated in the past, and we want to strengthen it in the future. For those who are coming to this institution for the first, I want to just take 1 minute to say that we are a multidisciplinary university with 8 different schools in law, business, international affairs, public policy, liberal arts, journalism, architecture, and banking and finance. We are both an undergraduate, postgraduate, masters, and PhD institution. We have 4,300 plus full-time students and over 430 full-time faculty members. We maintain a 1:10 faculty-student ratio, which has enabled us to focus on research. We are also, as I mentioned, strongly internationally linked, but also we emphasize research and knowledge creation in pretty much everything that we do, and that has become part of our institutional character. We also have a number of programs that bring students from across the world and from India. Right now we have visiting students from Nagaland. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you who are visiting from the state of Nagaland, which is one of our states in the northeast part of India. We are also hosting something like 20 plus students from Tsinghua University as we speak on a 3-week immersion program. We just completed a program for Australian students. We host nearly 80 to 90 students under the New Colombo plan from Australia, and there are university students from ANU, Queensland, Melbourne, Sydney, UNSW, and Murdoch, who are part of that group of students who have come on an immersion program. And similarly, every year around 300 students of Jindal go abroad. They go to Oxford, they go to Harvard, they go to Columbia, they go to universities in Australia, including in Murdoch, they go to Taipei, they go to mainland China, they go to Europe. These are on the short-term study abroad program. We have dual degree programs with universities around the world. We have short-term student exchange program. So in a way, the idea of collaboration is deeply embedded in what we do. But more importantly, one of the things that we want to also do, and that's part of this conference, is that how do we build research-based partnerships? In fact, as all of us who work in universities know, that this is the most difficult part of collaborations. And the reason this is most difficult is that ultimately professors end up doing what they feel like doing. Universities can't control and tell professors what to do, and that's part of the academic freedom and intellectual freedom that is deeply embedded in universities. So in most every other aspect of collaboration, university administration and deans and international office can take a lead, but when it comes to research-based partnerships, research-based collaborations, it is the individual professor who decides who will prefer whether he or she wants to partner with an institution or an individual. And that means at best we can create an ecosystem, an environment, a facilitative process, an opportunity to be connected, which in turn enable individual faculty members to make informed decisions about collaborations. We can of course create funding opportunities. We can create opportunities for people to put in resources so that professors can actually pursue the idea of collaborative research. But ultimately, whether a research partnership needs to be built or not, and with whom it needs to be built, will be a decision that the individual faculty members will be taking. And that is why it becomes a far more challenging exercise to promote research-based partnerships. And of course, when it comes to humanities and social sciences and professional schools such as the one that we have, it becomes even more difficult for such partnerships to emerge. So I want to once again thank you and congratulate you for coming to India and to coming to JGU for this conversation. So I look forward to being part of this conversation to the extent I can, but I am very delighted that all of you are here, and I would like to wish this conference every success. Thank you very much.
May I now invite Dean Thomas Mika.
Okay. I would like to welcome everyone to India, but I've just arrived, so I'm in that same group as well. As you can hear, I'm not native to India, most recently in New Zealand. And what I'd like to do is, I'm a theory professor, so I will try to present a couple useful concepts for research collaborations, particularly around interdisciplinary research based on curiosity, and also try to illustrate it with a few situations. I believe in globalization, and I'm an anomaly in my family. I have a literacy in one language. I have all my degrees in the same field, and I was educated in one country. But when we go through immigration and customs, we have a whole bag of passports that are all different colors, like a bag of candy, and my children speak 6 different languages and have residency in many countries. And there's a generational difference there. I think the world is much more open. I was just recently teaching in China, and I told the students when I was working there, I said, with a good education, you can go everywhere. And I tried to live that. We have a lot of top-ranked cities, and we have a lot of fascinating urban environments in my field of architecture and urban design, where people are testing and experimenting and coming up with a lot of new innovative processes that become points of curiosity for researchers in other places. And I think this is one of the things to keep in mind, too. Within the prospects of this globalization model, dig deep locally, look for local expertise and use that, because if something is interesting to your researchers, it will be interesting to researchers around the world. Now, how do you become a good researcher? Curiosity. It's the origins of my teaching career and my research. I go all the way back to childhood, and a lot of the PhD students I've supervised have also come from different fields to start to investigate and see the world differently through higher education. It is an amazing vehicle for transformation, both of yourself, but of the world too. And origins are very delicate things. A lot of times we won't even know that something has started until we're farther down the road into it. And this also applies to research and research collaborations. I just raced back last night. I got back a couple hours ago from an event here in India called the Jaipur Literary Festival, where I got to hear presentations from jailed archivists working in Russia and poets working in obscure places who have devoted their life to producing new forms of creativity, which is an important part of knowledge too. There's this great quote from the novelist Emily Dickinson. She said, "The cure for boredom is curiosity." And then she added, "There is no cure for curiosity." And I think that's the basis for all good research. From curiosity, we go to expertise, and from expertise into innovation. Expertise often involves knowledge production and building a momentum, but also identifying exceptions and looking for exceptional people, exceptional circumstances, exceptional opportunities. There's got to be a curiosity about all of those different aspects for research to have that momentum to continue. In my field as a designer, I always say that our superpower is the ability to bend reality. We always try to make the world better than it is, not to accept things the way they are, and to look for new visions and new ways to do things. Everything from simple level of shoes to the design of entire infrastructures. It's very important, I think, too, when you're doing research, to understand the idea of critical mass. So this is an important concept I've discovered when I was a research dean. You need to have a certain amount of people interested in an issue or a topic, or have some affinity or some shared methodologies to allow real collaborations to gain traction. They used to joke when I was working in Australia, they said there's 4 levels of international collaboration. The first one is the get to know you phase, that's the MOUs, the handshakes. The next one is let's go out and try something and get a couple of research togethers for a joint project. The third one becomes let's scale this up and see how big we can make this. And then the top level, which is the hardest to achieve, we used to call mutually assured destruction, where you're so financially interlocked with the other collaborator that you will call to check on the health of all the other researchers on a regular basis because of that intrinsic connectivity. This is something to think about too. It's a stage or processes. I often tell students when I'm teaching about design and urbanism, I was going to show an image, but I'm going to resist that temptation. Picture in your mind, if you take a map of the world and you draw a circle that includes India, China, Japan, Korea, Indonesia, excludes Australia and New Zealand where I was, and they felt very sad about that. If you draw a circle around that, that contains 10% of the landmass, but 50% of the population of the world. And that's the basic scope of the ASEAN century that we're in. And that's where all the wicked problems are happening, and that's where all the brilliant solutions are happening, and sometimes in a very fragmented way. We see that in urban environments we have a critical mass of people, but also opportunities. And we find in research centers and in collaborations with universities, once you get that critical mass of people, not always in harmony, but more or less bicycling in the same direction, then amazing things can happen. When I was a research dean in Australia, for example, the government identified 14 different wicked problems they would like to have solved. And as a research dean, my responsibility was to get all of our key researchers involved in some of those panels. But I did something a little counterintuitive. For example, water security. Instead of just putting desalination engineers on the project, we put social workers and researchers in social work that found and quantified the financial impact of the drought on people's nutrition, on the social problems, the psychological, the life expectancy, and so expanded it beyond simply a mechanical problem to a social problem. And I think this is an important thing to think about too when you're developing research collaborations. There's a great story of back in the 1850s in London with the cholera epidemic, that there was plenty of data about who was perishing and where. But it was the Dr. John Snow who actually said, let's map it. And when they started to map that data, they realized the morbidity was tied to the water wells. And from that, they actually realized that the solution to the problem was through the waterway, and it was not airborne. So the secret to that message is, if you're stuck with data and you can't figure it out, get a geographer, get a social scientist, get a historian, get a law professor, and bring them into these wicked problems, because you actually have much more robust and resilient solutions. I'm going to close with just two insights from my experience around the world working at 8 different universities and building research collaborations. We were trying to get some seed funding from the EU all the way down in New Zealand. And a very kind rector pulled me aside and said, look, the EU has some very strict rules. He said, if you're duplicating exactly what we're doing, we don't need you, and they will take you out of the grant. They said also, if you are so far away from what we're doing that it's looking like we're just going to New Zealand on holiday, they will also remove you from the grant. He said the secret, the sweet spot, is strategic adjacency. That you don't want to duplicate what your partners are doing. You want to take control of an emerging field adjacent to what they're doing so that their research will grow into yours and yours will grow into theirs. And that does an entirely different approach towards mapping expertise around the world and how you contribute. The other model I heard was from a professor of innovation, also from Finland. And he said he had started 8 different companies. And I said, how did you do so many companies quickly? And he said, the secret was we would find an industry like agriculture, find one of their wicked problems, and then look far and wide for a non-intuitive industry that solved that problem natively. So distribution of, say, agricultural resources and waste, they turned to aerospace and to air traffic control. And he said, and then I take a researcher from each field, we make a nonprofit, and then they produce all of the knowledge. So my 2 takeaways are think about adjacency, and think about these dual absences or these dual voids as a way of bringing together different disciplines. Thank you.
I now invite Professor Laknath Jaisinghe, speaking on behalf of the Dean of Jindal Global Business School, to please address the crowd.
Good morning and g'day. So, similar to, my name's Laknath, by the way. Laknath Jaisinghe. I come to you from Australia. Born and bred in Melbourne. A bit like Michael, have quite a globalised background as well. My parents come from Sri Lanka. They migrated to Melbourne. And the 4 of us, the 4 of their kids were born there. I was trained there, educated there, trained there. And surprisingly, for someone from a South Asian background, I'm actually quite monolingual. I'm training in a couple of languages, Hindi, French and German at the moment as well. I'm here to speak about research, and one of the things I'm very passionate about is, and Michael hit the key word before, is curiosity. And I think that's a key word that many of you will hear today, I imagine. And particularly for the younger students in the room, I implore you, if you're thinking of a research career, to go on and use this key word, curiosity, as you go through your studies. Try and pick something that really turns you on. I mean, I use the phrase, and excuse my language, that pisses you off. You know, what really gets you going? What really gets you, really sort of grills you underneath? And try and understand what's underneath that. So when we're talking about research excellence, I'll give you a bit of background about my history here. So I actually trained firstly as a biochemist, but I haven't told you what I'm a professor in yet. I'm a professor in marketing. And I think that transition has been a transition over 20 years. I trained as a biochemist, first at the University of Melbourne. When I was studying my science degree, it was a BSc, I found, yes, I was interested in the life sciences, but I was actually also interested in the commercial world. And as I went through my bachelor degree in biochemistry, I found I was reading more social science stuff, more social science and humanities, and I came to this thing called cultural anthropology. And from there, I found a key work that sort of blended this idea of cultural anthropology and what I was interested in at the time, and still am, which is brands and brand research and marketing research. Why do we actually buy the brands that we do? And so this sort of picked this journey, probably from when I was about 20 years of age, picked this journey right through about how do we actually get in underneath what consumers are doing with brands, and how do we understand it from a cultural point of view? And that's been my journey. After a couple of years of working in the brand and advertising industry, I realised I needed more knowledge. So I went back and studied a marketing degree with a communication focus, and that further piqued my curiosity. It sort of turned me on, if you want to put it in, turned me on into the discipline into which I now sit, which is marketing, communications, brand research, and so on. After a few more years of working, I decided I need more information. I hungered for understanding what was going on underneath the things I was seeing in the advertising industry. So I went back to the University of Queensland and studied a research master's. A wonderful time in my life. 40 higher degree students engaged in incredible discussions on a daily basis at breakfast, lunch, dinner, at the pub. Never forget the value of a pub. Publication and the other pub. Because that's where ideas occur. You know, that's where ideas sort of form over coffees and drinks. You know, away from the more formal engagements. I mean, I'm sure this will happen in these occasions today. These discussions will happen in these occasions over lunch and dinner today. From there, I went on to a PhD, Melbourne Business School, marrying both my advertising background and also my cultural theory background into a consumer anthropology PhD, and from there I went on. So if we're talking about research excellence, I want you to think about what actually does research excellence mean? What are we actually getting at here? How do we define it? Whose service does it work within or for? We could talk about it from an individual point of view, me as a scholar, you as researchers and scholars publishing or trying to publish in top-tier journals in your individual fields. It's a selfish endeavour, it's one of ego and so on. Curiosity. Is that what it is simply? Do we sit individually as islands? I don't believe so. like Michael, he used the word, I believe, or used the phrase, I believe in globalization. I believe in globalization too. That individual scholar sits within something called an institution or university, actually sits within something called a department or school or faculty, which sits within a university. There are all these sorts of interplays between the three sorts of levels, the individual, the department. Increasingly, that department is seen as, and let's not kid ourselves, it's seen as a business unit, right? So it's an individual, sits within a business unit called a department or school or faculty, sits within an institution or university, sits within a community, within a national framework of research priorities. In Australia, as Thomas mentioned earlier, the government has developed 14, I think you mentioned? 14 wicked problems. Sits within 7 or 8 different research priorities, national research priorities, and from them cascade down sort of the administrative and managerial implications of how to manage an individual's, or sorry, should I say, universities, the departments, and then an individual's sitting within that department's research endeavours. I want to talk about, just very briefly, about the Australian experience. That's what I know best. We're starting here at JGU, Jindal Global Business School, to institute a managed research program. And I'm just going to share some insights from the Australian experience I have working across 5 years in the Australian situation, and then talk about some of the issues that we have when we talk about it, translating those issues here into Jindal Global Business School. So the first is, okay, we have national research priorities in Australia, so does India. It's up to the university then to translate those national research priorities into research strengths and core competencies, if we use the language of management. We could even go back before that and ask, why do we do this? What's the purpose? And again, I mean, you know, as I use the phrase, let's not kid ourselves, let's not kid ourselves. We have to understand the political economy within which the university or institution currently sits, right? And then embed those national priorities within that, the university's priorities within that. The university might have other tensions as well. Here at Jindal Global University, we're a private research university, okay? In Australia, we have, for example, by contrast, 43 universities, of which 38 are publicly funded, or should I say increasingly less publicly funded. So they have to become more private, they have to source more of their revenue from private sources. But essentially private funded, unlike our university here in India, Jindal. So within that framework, okay, this sort of political economy, how do we manage or how do we develop research priorities, research strengths? These are discussions you will have today for sure, I'm very sure, over lunch and dinner and so on. One of the things I'm very careful to avoid, and this is a very real tension for me as a research manager, my role here at Jindal Global Business School is Vice Dean. I oversee the research side of things in the business school. But I'm very careful to avoid a particular tension, both for me, but also for my colleagues. And that's to avoid the sort of, I guess, the negative implications of what people call audit culture. You know, the sort of governance aspect. Trying to avoid that. But that's a real tension. That's a real tension we all feel. as managers, but also scholars. I play those roles at the same time, and it causes great tension. So these are things we need to talk through and work through ourselves. One of the things I think that I've seen from my Australian experience has been two things. One, the productivity, the increased productivity. And I don't just mean in sheer numbers of papers, I also mean in terms of the quality of research coming out from institutionalized national frameworks of research and how they are then translated through the university. I've seen increased quantity, yes, and sometimes that's seen as a negative, oh, we just go for the lowest common denominator. But I've also seen raised quality. Some of the perverse outcomes, by contrast, that I've seen, and these are well known, I mean, I'll just talk about three of them that I see, and I try and tell my colleagues to avoid them as well, this phenomenon of salami slicing. And we have a major research project, we just slice it and dice it as finely as we can to extract maximum value. But that's at the expense of putting together a holistic picture that could probably, if we talk about publications, be published in a higher venue. There's also again, let's not kid ourselves, research is a competitive endeavour. We're competing with others around the world to help solve a piece of the puzzle that others around the world are also working on. And there's this tendency to rush to print ahead of when results are final or complete, or as final or as complete as possible. One of the other perverse outcomes I have seen from the Australian system, and which I think universities should be careful to avoid, is that of hiring this, what people call the star player syndrome, purely for the effect of, okay, we need to drop their publications into our national audit frameworks. Now, it can work the other way as well, because a star player can bring expertise, insight, inspiration, but merely for the sake of research instrumentality or fulfilling research criteria in terms of publication lists should be avoided. I'm going to wrap up. I wish you all the best. I think this conference looks to be a fascinating day of discussion and debate, ideas. Good luck to you all, and I hope to chat with you sometime over lunch and dinner as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Laknath. I now request Lieutenant General Dr. Rajesh Kochar to please deliver his address.
The founding Vice Chancellor, Dr. C. Rajkumar, Professor Thomas Michael, Professor Kalyani Unkule, Professor Laknath Jaisinghe, the delegates for the Asian Conference, students both national and international, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning. Today I am going to speak to you on the very important topic of the role of universities in capacity building within policy and business sectors. We at the General Institute of Leadership Development and Executive Education look at it from a lens of relevance and rigor, and take executive education as a lever in shaping practice and research based on GILDI's framework. The General Institute of Leadership Development and Executive Education, which I head at the OP Jindal Global University, is one of the 3 capacity building institutes which conducts programs for working professionals. These programs are designed to meet the immediate need and make an impact on public and private corporations and governments in the area of upskilling manpower for different seniority levels across domestic and international sectors. It is always said that a good teacher may not be a good researcher, but a good researcher is always a good teacher. It means research and education are twins. Our respected Vice Chancellor, in his recent address at the World Economic Forum, emphasized on the need of latest cutting-edge knowledge, research, and ability to innovate in the area of robotics, megadata, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. He said that great universities around the world have a direct relationship with the development of economy and society. He also mentioned about the importance on imparting world-class education that will promote innovative pedagogy and rigorous researches leading to outstanding publications. What else, ladies and gentlemen, could be a testimony to the efforts of Jindal Global University in this direction than the mere fact that the only Vice Chancellor invited for the WEC, the World Economic Forum from India, was Professor C. Rajkumar. At JILDI, we continuously explore the role of executive education in creating context where research is linked to real managerial issues and where faculty relationships with the firms in turn enhance the quality of our research and teaching. We suggest that while traditional executive education designs may have modest impacts on managerial practice, action learning designs are a powerful way to forge the type of relationship that mutually benefits the practice and faculty research. Friends, today I am going to make a statement. We all know that the fact that the culture eats strategy for breakfast. Therefore, it is important for us as leaders to embed the culture of research in all what we do as an academic institute. I come from the armed forces and can comfortably say that getting a publication right is a lot like a military operation. It takes discipline, foresight, research and strategy, and if done right things, in total victory. Ladies and gentlemen, we start with the rigor and relevance, and therefore it is important to set the context. The executive education framework of OP Jindal Global University through JILDI helps in building better walking sticks. Considering a rigor and relevance as important criteria, JILDI with its more experienced students is a great crucible within which the faculty test the relevance of the research. Do managers relate to our research and then they can apply its lessons? Executive education is a setting where practitioners come to campus to make a connection between our field's research and their own managerial challenges. We are building JILDI on the quote of great CEO of General Electric, CEO Jack Welch, who said that an organization ability to learn and translate that learning into actions rapidly is the ultimate competitive advantage. JILDI is therefore a platform through where research is presented to the outside world, and at times it is even upon testing its relevance, thereby providing a competitive edge to the clientele and the faculty. Let us also have a look at the global scenario now. In a recent research conducted by the LinkedIn and lynda.com, 69 respondents said that their employers understood how that their organization would benefit from attending the program. Interestingly, when we are talking about research support through executive education, 59% of the respondents reported building valuable relations with the instructors. The underlying fact to the above statistics was the feeling of 71% respondents who felt that the program helped them solve challenges and their organizations faced. Drawing on the fourth generation learning systems and content from leading universities, think tanks, online learning hubs such as Coursera, EDX, lynda.com, Udacity, Udemy, Web2 is rapidly stitching together a seamless fabric of on-demand, massive, open online systems and cohort and certificate-based small private learning experiences. The personal learning experiences and platforms, as we call it, can be used for cultivating a road and a broad set of managerial capabilities and competencies largely grounded in algorithmic functional technical skills. The online fabric of executive skill development vehicles is being challenged mainly by the need to develop the contextualized learning that helps transfer skills to the neighboring domains and to appropriate the associated value. The vision of the Jindal Institute of of Leadership Development and Executive Education, that is JILDE, is to draw upon the best of the intellectual resources available at the OP Jindal Global University, along with its 8 schools as mentioned by the Vice Chancellor. In collaboration with its national and international academic partners, with a view to promoting leadership development and executive education within corporations, government agencies, intergovernment, public sector and non-government organizations, regulatory bodies and other institutions. In a short span of 5 years, we were founded in 2013. We have trained more than 4,500 officers. We have been a frontrunner in capacity building and nation building. Another feather in the hat is the completion of the prestigious World Bank project for training civil servants of the government of Afghanistan after competition with various universities and top B schools of India. We have successfully conducted mid-career training programs for the Indian Police Service officers, including a foreign leg at Cambridge University. We have delivered programs on government policies and governance for top-notch officers of the government. We hosted the first program in India on utility regulations and strategy for the regulatory bodies of India. We have had various MOUs with various universities, the Indian Army, the Indian Air Force, the Power Grid Corporation, universities in Bangladesh, universities in Austria, Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy at National University of Singapore and the AIT Thailand. For the matter, we look forward to the delegates in this conference to collaborate with us in the aspects of executive education, and I look forward to meeting all of you during the networking section in the evening, and I'm sure we will be able to have certain common grounds for collaboration. We have the competencies and resources for training on traditional modern topics like leadership, stress management, emotional intelligence, design thinking, public policy, public finance, business analytics, risk management, women empowerment, and so on and so forth. We have done more than 16 international programs for the government of West Bengal, government of Afghanistan, government of Bangladesh, government of Orissa, and the National Police Academy. In conclusion, I take help from what Professor Rajkumar spoke at Davos. He cited the example of JGU in India as a stellar example of how corporate philanthropy coupled with the notions of academic freedom and institutional autonomy has helped India see the emergence of a new not-for-profit university within a short span of time. It is noteworthy that the JGU, which was promoted just a decade back by the founding Chancellor, Mr. Naveen Jindal, has led the emergence of a new generation of private and philanthropic universities in India. You would recall that I spoke about walking sticks. I borrowed this from Fritz Roethlisberger. This synergy between practice and research was well articulated by Fritz Roethlisberger in 1977. Building on John Dewey's notions of learning by doing and Kurt Lewin's observation that there is nothing as practical as a good theory, Roethlisberger suggested that a theory was like a walking stick. Well-developed theory could help managers more effectively make their way in rough strategic and organization terrain. Roethlisberger also observed that interaction with the phenomena helped in the development of better walking sticks. And as a professional capacity building institute, which is a part of OP Jindal Global University, we continuously aspire to couple research rigor with managerial relevance. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Wish you a wonderful conference ahead and a wonderful stay at the OP Jindal Global University. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, Ankocha.